sometimes there is a sense or a narrative that the horse is bolted. What do you think are the one or two actions that have been most successful already in addressing AI concerns?
A big part of what civil society does is resist authoritarianism, injustice, extraction, and so on. And we can see that in the work, like terms that we use nowadays without thinking or that show up in our news feeds, like algorithmic bias or discrimination in digital rights era, things like that were created as part of our discourse through the concerted action of many leaders in the space, right? Who we have to lift up and give credit to. So I think that first is sort of the resistance. The second is really thinking about what is possible. Because I think too often nonprofit leaders tend to focus on what's not working. But we need to also create what is that alternative vision that we are looking for and how do we build that in this new age? So it's both the resistance to injustice, but also the creation of new possibilities.
And if you don't have both, you don't have hope. So I think one of the major ways in which you can make the transition from diagnosing the problem, resisting, creating bulwarks, showing where there's problems with trust and safety and trustworthiness and democratization of technology and so on, and move that into norms and laws and codes and narratives and market solutions is through changing who's in the room. If you broaden the table and broaden the voices, a lot of the work we've done with kids and youth leadership has been transformative. It changes the way that lawmakers, regulators, and tech leaders listen to problems when the problems are coming from the youth who've experienced the internet themselves, when they're the forefront of the advocacy. When you set up things like the Responsible Tech Youth Power Fund, and you set up Young Futures, and you set up other organizations that are channeling youth voices, it makes a big difference when they're in the room. If you can give workers seats at the table, when AI decisions are being made in enterprises about how it's going to get incorporated and whose jobs it's going to affect, it would change the way in which enterprise thinks about the risk-reward function for labor replacement, right? So I think it's really important for us to focus on getting different people in the room to imagine new possibilities. And I'm very encouraged by this. Like on regulation and laws, for instance, we've had 4,000 state laws on the books on AI. And, Christabel's organization does great work on this. We've educated policymakers globally on what are the issues. There are laws being passed around the world. There's amazing things coming from amazing places. One of the organizations we never expected to be at the forefront of this was all the people who worked on AI likenesses, and that included fashion models. There was an organization called the Model Alliance in New York that Governor Hochul signed into law that said that the decisions about AI usage of fashion models and how they would then participate in the decisions and the gains from technology that was using AI, that was using their likenesses, had to be shared with them. And that's now being replicated in other states. Kids code laws and safety laws are being replicated in other states. Consumer protection laws are being replicated in many states because old folks are suffering from fraud, scams, and hoaxes coming at them very fast, financial and romantic frauds and scams. And so there's great bipartisan animus around all of this stuff. And I think there's real hope that we can get some of this checked, and it can feel like the horse has bolted, or maybe you can feel like you had a stable of horses and 6 have bolted, but there's still 12 in the stable. We got to save the 12.